Good afternoon, and a special salute to veterans on this Veterans Day 2024. Let's get right down to business here with the news-driven hour after Ben Shapiro. We do this just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air right now, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And yes, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Another record-shattering day for stocks and Bitcoin. Looks like the roaring 20s are back following the election of President Trump to his second term in office. Stocks ending higher today, kicking off the new week with the Dow, the S&P 500, and NASDAQ building on last week's record run-up. The Dow closing above 44,000 for the first time today, while the S&P 500 ended just above 6K after popping its head above 6K for the first time on Friday. The bond market was closed today in observance of the Veterans Day holiday. Stocks rallied last week with all three of the major averages finishing out the week with the all-time highs following President Trump's victory in the election, and the Fed putting the icing on the cake last week by cutting short-term rates by a quarter percentage point. For the week, the Dow was up 4.6%, the S&P 500 up 4.7%, and the NASDAQ rallied 5.7%. And now we have a new week beginning here with additional gains. Bitcoin and other cryptos red hot, rallying big time since last Tuesday's election. Bitcoin reaching an all-time high, well, near 90,000. Right now, Bitcoin flirting with a new all-time high near 90,000. Blew past 85,000 this morning and has been moving up. We'll take a closer look at that in just a moment here. Gold futures ending lower today, the lowest in more than 7 weeks. Taking a look at the price of gold, it's hovering at around $2,629 an ounce. Oil also finishing lower today with U.S. and global benchmark prices at their lowest in nearly 2 weeks. Right now, oil in New York just above $68 a barrel, and Brent crude in London just below $72 a barrel. I'll discuss oil and gas prices with oil industry analyst John KILDUFF at Again Capital and CNBC contributor. Despite oil prices moving lower, it looks like California drivers are going to be in for a shock pretty soon with what was done late Friday by a California regulatory board. Could be higher gas prices to the tune of maybe 65 cents a gallon higher in the new year. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it with John KILDUFF coming up later this hour. President Trump on track to take off is on track to take office, that is in January. What happens now to all of the legal cases President Trump has been facing? I'll discuss that with attorney Lou Shapiro, criminal defense attorney and legal analyst here in Los Angeles. He'll be joining me live later this hour. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, Bitcoin, cryptos, gold, and the whole works now. Joining us live, top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, CEO and Chief Investment Officer at Winans Investments, which you can find at winansinvestments.com. Ken Winans is also a market historian, author of numerous books, including Investment Atlas 1 and 2, soon to be Investment Atlas 3, also Forbes magazine contributor. And yes, Ken has his crypto credentials too, and he's also hosting Winning with Winans, heard every Monday night at 6 p.m. on your favorite station, 790 KBC. Good afternoon to you, Ken Winans.
Frank, we live in these wonderfully historic times in a marvelous bull market, and you know what? Everybody's smiling, which is so nice.
It's nice when it goes up, especially the crypto world getting a lot of attention today as we speak. Bitcoin flirting with 90,000 here. What do you make of this tremendous rally we've seen here with Bitcoin and some of these other cryptos here?
Well, before we jump into the crypto, let me jump in here real quick. Everybody's been talking about this is the top. The market is hitting its top. First off, that's, in my opinion, that's not true. This is a very broad-based, powerful rally. When you have these outliers like Bitcoin and Ethereum rocking and rolling, but at the same time, I'm looking at some other big names doing the same thing. This thing has some legs to it. Bitcoin is having what we call in commodities a melt-up. And now you have people scrambling to get into it. You know, you have to be careful. I mean, if you're going to do it, just have a discipline about it. But by all means, I think that, as they said in NASA, throttle up. And this thing is going to throttle right through the end of the year.
It is amazing to see what's happened just today, let alone over the past week. It's been less than a week since the election. Of course, we've seen this record-shattering rally for stocks as well as Bitcoin and some of the other cryptos. Even Doge is up there 34 cents, by the way. That's an eye-popping gain since just in the last week or so. Ethereum has joined the party now, up around 3,300, above 3,300 here. So we're keeping an eye on all of those. And we've seen some wild predictions on where some of these things go now. Ken Winans, what are your thoughts on where Bitcoin, for example, goes from here?
Well, Bitcoin obviously is in a parabolic rally. It's going straight up. I would say this. I look at it maybe a little different than everybody else. To me, it's another commodity. And, for people who are tempted to say, I don't know anything about wallets and, cold and hot and all this stuff. Well, number one, there are ETFs out there you can buy. I would look at that. And anybody who is a commodity trader, whether they know it or not, there are commodity futures that trade on both Bitcoin and Ethereum on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. So you can pick conventional ways to play it. But Frank, I think you want to be very careful about chasing anything. I caution people on it. These are very, very volatile things. I mean, I'm real happy with how Coinbase, which is an exchange that trades the cryptos, has been performing. I think it's up like 28% in the last 2 weeks. But with that, let's talk about some other winners that I'm just amazed at. You are suddenly having the small cap stocks coming to life. The mid cap stocks are coming to life. This rally is broadening out. And then I think that we'll be talking about it in a bit. There are some names that have not been participating that need at least people to be on top of it.
Oh, certainly the magnificent one, NVIDIA, getting a lot of attention for its run-up this year. It pulled back today in the face of the latest rally, and it's been added to the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So that's something that we're still tracking, right, Ken? That's the one that led the AI charge in the last year or so. NVIDIA down more than 2 today to 145 and change. What about NVIDIA and the Magnificent Seven names?
Well, here's the thing. I'm looking at a lot of companies that are tied to AI, and generally they have pulled back through this rally. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think what it means is that NVIDIA's earnings are coming out, I think, in 2 weeks. And I think a lot of people are going to wait and see, what does it look like? Are they meeting expectations? But even in the tech world, you have to basically dissect it. And there's clearly areas of tech that are just not participating right now, whether it's because of valuation, whether it's because of missed earnings in the third quarter. But one thing for sure, Frank, I think that anybody just sitting back and saying, I'm going to turn my back on my portfolio, I disagree with that. I think you need to make some rotational moves.
All right. Someone who's getting a lot of attention these days is Elon Musk, with Tesla rising nearly $30 today to $350. That's, of course, also one of the Magnificent Seven names. Elon Musk is now the 300 billion plus man, about 320 billion. I think he went up, about 25 billion just over the last week.
Well, we're all kind of joking about, will he catch John Rockefeller, who was the oil baron back in the late 1800s, and I think his net worth was something like 450 billion in today's dollars. So we're all rooting. Hey, if anybody wants to take on old John Rockefeller, let's have it be Elon. I just love it.
That is amazing. So now with Elon Musk very close to President Trump now, I guess the EV space is being relooked at, right? In fact, everything as far as regulations concerned is being re-examined, and the mandates and all of that. And, of course, the fossil fuel industry also expected to see a rebound under President Trump. So change is coming, right?
Well, it is. And, whether you talk about Bitcoin or you talk about EVs, what you're talking about is a change in the way things are going to be perceived. I mean, one thing, EV, and by no means am I an expert in it, but I'm hearing it from people who are, that we're now going to finally have enough charging stations outside of California. So because before it was, hey, I'd like the idea, but if you're in Nevada and you're driving around, you get a little nervous if you can't find a charging station. And it's also the fast-moving charge, the quick chargers, they call them. It's also the infrastructure to be able to transmit electrical power more efficiently and effectively. Frank, this is all going to be laid out as we go into really between now and March.
Another stock that's getting a lot of talk nowadays, DJT, the Trump media company stock, and now there's a lot of talk about whether President Trump will have to sell the DJT stock before he takes office. The stock got a rebound today, up $1.50 to 33 and change. Ahead of the election, it moved sharply higher. What about that one?
Well, there are rules about elected officials and bureaucrats on what they can and cannot own. I distinctly remember when Dick Cheney was vice president of the United States, he had to unload his Halliburton stock because he had been chairman of that company. I think the rules are now modified. Don't hold me on it, Frank, but I believe they're now modified. You can't have controlling interest. You can still have passive interest, but we'll all have to see how that plays out.
All right, and so we see the dollar really firming up in the last week since the election, impacting the price of gold, which did move higher today, by the way, by about $11. Right now, $2,629. What about these dynamics that we're seeing?
Well, you know, I actually find it pretty funny. You have all these economists coming on various news sources saying that all these, you know, that the Trump policies are going to be highly inflationary and all that. And I turn around and say, okay, well, wait a minute. I'm looking here. Commodity prices have generally moved down. Gold's moved down. Dollar's stable. These are not inflationary scenarios. Anybody who pulls out an econ textbook from high school or college would know that's not the way it plays out. So very clearly, people's opinions and what's happening right now are not working out. But let me tell you what's important about the strong dollar is that it means that more money is going to come out of foreign funds into U.S. stocks, which could propel our markets even higher.
All right, the bond market closed today for the Veterans Day holiday. And by the way, we salute you, Ken, for your service to the United States. You yourself are a veteran, so I hope you had at least enjoyed part of the day off today or going to be enjoying the rest of the day. And as all of us salute you here for your service. What about bonds? I know you like talking about the bond market too.
You know, I just wrote an article in Forbes about, and I'm going to, you know, again, we have to look at bond markets. I think there's going to be some real problems in the municipal bond market, especially for blue states. I think there's going to be some real interesting things as these massive debts have to be refinanced. But on the corporate bond side or the preferred stock side, anything that's a dividend or a interest-paying thing for business, especially on building out infrastructure, I think there's going to be some real opportunities under the Trump administration.
All right, and real estate, certainly another area which President Trump knows a lot about, commercial real estate. Probably no other president in history has been this skilled as far as real estate development is concerned. What do you see ahead on real estate under President Trump?
You know, Frank, I'll tell you that, and it doesn't get a lot of play. You and I rarely talk about it, but REITs are really coming back to life, especially industrial and commercial REITs. Everybody had written those off as we're going to have all these catastrophic bankruptcies, and suddenly they've really come to life. So anybody looking for value plays, real estate might be an area to look at, and I definitely think Mr. Trump knows if you want a strong industrial base in the United States, you have to have industrial real estate to match it.
All right, real estate investment trust, that's the REITs for short. Right, banks, of course, also expecting less regulation under the new incoming President Trump take two, right? So what about banks here? Well,
you know, whether we're talking about decreased regulation or just a lack of confusing regulation, meaning that, you know, many times, like we talk about with crypto, it was who's supposed to be regulating this? That was a big problem with crypto's volatility. Who's on first, who's on second? Suddenly, it's all gaining clarity. And I think that we're going to find that because a lot of banks have been saying, hey, wait a minute, can we have crypto accounts? Can we not? That's all going to be cleared up.
All right. President Trump expected to be the crypto president and crypto reserve and all of that. What kind of innovative uses of crypto might you see by the U.S. government looking ahead?
Well, in my Forbes article, I actually threw out something that's talking about California's financial woes. And, you know, most people don't think about it, but although California is the sixth largest economy in the world, it can't issue a currency. It doesn't print money. It prints debt. Well, guess what? Crypto, you might find that states will issue their own crypto for their own needs. So there's a lot of opportunity in a lot of different areas. But I do still think that the biggest growth in crypto is going to be anything that ties to stable coins. That's where is going to be the big growth.
And interestingly, El Salvador's big Bitcoin bet is really paying off. They added Bitcoin to their currency choice there, right, some years ago now, and that was something very innovative, and at least for the moment, looks like they're doing quite well with it.
They are, even though they did go through a rough time with it a couple of years ago, and it looked like we were going to have to go down and bail them out. But no, it is really amazing we're having that. But Frank, I just want to caution the audience. Look, I love a good bull market. So do you. You and I have known each other a long time. We've been through the worst of times and the best of times. We just want to be careful not to chase. But I would say this. People who have made good money on their investments, you want to meet with your tax advisors before the end of the year and see if you want to make any adjustments going into next year.
A reminder that Bitcoin goes up and it goes down, as we've already seen in recent years. So that is something to keep in mind. And, of course, on this program, we do talk to the biggest fans of crypto as well as the harshest critics. I know you have your crypto credentials and certainly are a voice of reason and sanity. And And in the face of some of these historical predictions, with the Bitcoin predictions through the roof at this point, and of course there's a lot of euphoria here at the moment. But how would you caution the audience not to get swept up in that hysteria?
Well, here's the thing. Part of what happened with Bitcoin, it was that there's a set number of tokens, period, that you cannot go past. Then suddenly a year ago, they were talking about having Bitcoin, and then there's Bitcoin Cash. There's all these other kind of breakoffs from it, and people started getting confused, saying, wait a minute, I thought I understood what this was about, and it's not really a stock split. So very clearly, the regulators are going to help clarify the do's and don'ts with Bitcoin. But I think that this is good old-fashioned, trend is your friend, buy it. But I think that there's still going to be some details to work out going into next year with the Trump administration.
All right. At this point, Ken Winans, any specific places where you are putting money now and/or taking it off the table?
Frank, we talked about it before my interview, and a couple of things that are catching my eye that I think that are cautionary for people out there. I'm really confused why Apple and Microsoft have not been part of this rally at all, the Trump rally. I just raised that as a money manager, I grow concerned with things that lag. If you lag in a bull run, you're going to sure as heck lag in a bear in any kind of pullback. And I see that both of those are having valuation problems. So I think, again, when you talk about tech, clients might want to really get into the weeds and see what's working, what's not, and don't be afraid to rotate out of things that are not doing well.
We see Apple down nearly $3 today at $224 and change. Microsoft down more than $4.50 or so to $4.18 a share. Any other places that you'd be lightening up or have more interest in under the new, more business-friendly anti-regulation administration coming in?
Well, a couple of things that I think, number one, people have been sold a bill of goods about global asset allocation. I know a lot of people on this audience have some kind of a financial planner or wealth advisor that told them that it made sense to have money in all these other parts of the world. There's nothing wrong with that, but when you're a U.S. investor, you have the benefit of having, you're Rome. You're the modern-day Rome. You can buy anything globally here. You don't have to have money in other countries. So I'd say get out of those foreign funds, stick with the U.S.
Interestingly, you saw the reports. It looks like money's starting to come out of China for the first time in years and maybe coming over here.
Well, exactly. I mean, I look at these ETFs. I mean, all these touted ETFs. I mean, here the China ETF is down 5% since the election. The India ETF's down 6%. I'm just looking at nothing but red on these foreign country ETFs. So I think it's to tell you that this tariff thing is probably the real deal. And if you're in these funds, you're probably not going to be in a good position if that, in fact, happens. All
right. Since we last spoke, it's clear now that President Trump has taken all of the swing states, all 7, and including Michigan, by the way. So the auto workers there looks like went for President Trump. And in the face of what's happening in the auto industry and the tariff issue and Chinese vehicle competition and all of that. Wish we had more time, but guess what? We do have more time. Coming up in the 6 o'clock hour, I'll be speaking with Ken Winans again, host of Winning with Winans, heard every Monday night here at 6 p.m. on your favorite station, 790 KABC. So, Ken, we can
talk to you soon.
That's right. We're going to continue the conversation and go through the whole works this evening on Winning with Winans. That is top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, CEO and Chief Investment Officer at Winans Investments, which you can find at winansinvestments.com. And right now, let's get out to the freeways here on 790 KABC. Hi, it's Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest source of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Now, with the U.S. debt at more than $35 trillion and climbing, not to mention the Biden administration getting us involved in costly wars, developing the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, and inflation still spiraling, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA, one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement in the market and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and, yes, silver. Give Joe Morgan a call at 1-800-753-8534. Mention Frank Mottek, and you can get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call now, 1-800-753-8534, or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. Good afternoon and happy Veterans Day today. Special salute to all of our veterans listening this evening. The Dow In record high territory with a closing gain of 304 points, selling at 44,293, closing above 44,000 today. The S&P 500 up 6 to settle at 6,001 for the first time, closing above 6,000. The NASDAQ up 12 at 19,299. All the major averages at record highs, extending last week's big record-shattering rally. Bitcoin in focus, hovering near 90,000 this afternoon. Right now up about 1,600 to 88,743. Ethereum up 37 at 3,366. And Doge has popped right now at 34 cents. NVIDIA down 237 today at 145 and change. Apple down 273 at 224.23. Shares of DJT, the Donald Trump media stock, of $1.50 at 33.41. Gold moving higher now, up $11.40 to 2,629.10. Silver up 19 cents at $30.80 an ounce. Crude oil futures in New York up 9 cents at 68.13 a barrel, and Brent crude in London up 7 cents at 71.90 a barrel. Tesla on the move today, up nearly $30 at $350 a share. And now the latest news for you here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Turning now to energy. Oil prices have come down over the past week since the presidential election. Oil futures finishing lower again today, with U.S. and global benchmark oil prices at the lowest seen in a couple of weeks. President Trump expected to encourage domestic oil production and take a hard line against Iran. The dollar is firmed, and that too impacts the price of oil. Meanwhile, prices for gas could be going up quite a bit here in California despite lower oil prices. California drivers could potentially pay more at the gas pump next year after a state environmental agency voted late Friday to approve a proposal to tighten fuel standards in the name of reducing reliance on fossil fuels and combating air pollution. The California Air Resources Board, also known as CARB, successfully amended its low-carbon fuel standards program on Friday, late Friday. The board issued a report last year estimating that the increased fuel standards would drive gas prices here in California up by 47 cents a gallon by 2025. Another estimate says it might even be up by as much as 65 cents a gallon by next year, 85 cents a gallon higher by 2030, and $1.50 a gallon higher by 2035. Joining us live now, oil industry analyst John KILDUFF at Again Capital, also CNBC contributor. John KILDUFF, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Frank. Great to be speaking with you again.
Wonderful to have you with us here. John, thank you very, very much. First of all, on this news here in California with this new regulation put into place and California drivers facing a potentially higher gas prices, give us your reaction to that big news here, first of all.
I just continue to be mystified by this approach of going their own way, isolating California even more. I mean, that's the biggest problem you and I talk about, Frank, when you guys experience prices that are way above the national average. You know, when you have a couple of refineries go down, or you have other transportation issues, the rest of the region even can't get more fuel to you on a quick basis because the specifications are so different. If you want to call them more stringent, call them that, but they're just so different that the fuel almost has to be reblended or re-refined. That's what's going to happen to meet these CARB standards now that you just referenced, by the way. There's going to be a couple of step or two additional to the refining process to get it to meet those requirements. So that's where your big costs are coming in. And then as the available pool of feedstock fuel diminishes, that's also helping to drive that all up. I'm again mystified because if we learn nothing from this big inflation problem that we had as a country and really globally, a big part of it was a spike in energy costs. And if you don't understand that relatively stable and or lower energy prices are key to your economy until you make it someday to this renewable future, you're harming the voters, you're hurting the residents, you're hurting the economy so badly. I just can't believe there are any greater lessons learned from what we just went through, Frank, is my reaction.
Just at the same time, oil prices starting to come down again for a variety of reasons. And in the meantime, California drivers still paying the highest in the country, $4.51 a gallon, by the way. I just take a look at it. Average price for regular here in the Los Angeles area, $4.88. The average price for premium and diesel still up there at $4.86 a gallon. Obviously, with President Trump coming in again, looks like the oil industry will be favored once again domestically, right? What do you expect to happen under President Trump as we approach January when he takes office, and what it'll mean for the oil industry and ultimately for gas prices here in Southern California?
Well, he was a big proponent and champion of the industry, and the industry loves him back very much. I can tell you that. He's got a lot of support. And I do expect that he'll open up additional federal lands for drilling. I expect that the new EPA chief is a local congressman or former congressman from here in the New York area. Lee Zeldin is the rumor. He will also look to ease the burden on the industry to basically produce more. Also, what hasn't been talked about, I wonder if there could be a revival of the Keystone pipeline, which would have been good for another 400,000 barrels of oil a day. I think the United States, just in general, and the industry should take great pride in how we're giving OPEC Plus such a problem, Frank. They've been trying to cut. They've been trying to hold back oil from the global market to a degree to generate a higher price. The Saudis right now are actually having to borrow money for Saudi Aramco to fund its dividend to get that money back into the public coffers so they can spend it on, their dreams and aspirations there. And they're not getting their way because of the U.S. Footprint and presence. So I think you'll see more of it. I'm concerned that the industry will be unshackled to such a degree that they'll hurt themselves and shoot themselves in the foot. I do worry about that. The blue sky mentality out there, reigns supreme too. And I try to counsel some of them when I speak with them about this, but they're all gung-ho to do even more unfettered production, Frank.
In the meantime, we're watching the Middle East powder keg, and President Trump expected to take a hard line against Iran and maybe give Israel a freer hand in dealing with its defense issues. What about that front, and what do you see ahead there?
It's going to be a changed landscape, too. Little concerning, although the market didn't react to it. Prime Minister Netanyahu saying that he was going to take care of Iran's nuclear ambitions. I know he and President-elect Trump have been speaking several times already. And which I found also interesting, Frank, was that upon President Trump's election here, the Houthis announced a ceasefire. Trying to, I guess, signal that they want to step back from all this as well, not to mention that the Israelis just had significant operations against the Houthis about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, so they know pretty well what's in store for them. So, there could be some pain, and there's going to be some worry in this oil market, though, Frank, to the extent that this gets taken to the next level and Israel, say, follows through with its seeming desire to take care of Iran's nuclear ambitions. That would set the stage for another round or cycle of angst in the market, high prices, potential fears over supply disruption, et cetera. But as I keep counseling, there's not a lot that Iran can do to hurt us. In most of the Western hemisphere, it's really China that bears the brunt of Iranian supply issues. So, the calculus will be what it is, but there will be a cycle again of ups and downs with these prices. But the overall trajectory, Frank, again, is lower.
In the meantime, Israel's still under a threat by Iran, and I see in the Jerusalem Post, for example, concerns have been raised within Israel's defense establishment that Iran might try to exploit the period before former President Trump's return to office to act against Israel. So we are following those reports very, very closely. And, of course, if Iran attacks Israel again, certainly we can expect another retaliatory strike by Israel, which could be even more significant than the last one.
That is certainly the cycle, Frank. But I will tell you this, just from what we observe and can discern here, and I'm not a military expert, but I certainly lived with these threats and have to deal with them for years now. Is that Iran strikes Israel again at its absolute peril. If you read, between the lines and what the Israelis did in the last air raid and the degradation of radar and air defenses, I think Israel right now could walk right into Iran and do whatever they wanted to the country and their facilities. I think right now what you're hearing out of Khomeini and some of the IRGC folks is pure bluster, pure statements for domestic consumption, knowing full well that they are not going to follow through, or if they do, I'm not too worried about this going to the next level, because that'll probably be close to the last level once the Israelis take care of business if there's another misguided Iranian attempt at striking back at Israel. It's really that much of an outranked, outsized differential here militarily, in my view.
We'll keep an eye on that with you, John. Thank you very much for taking the call on all of this this afternoon. That is prominent oil industry analyst John Kilduff at Again Capital, also CNBC contributor and longtime contributor to this program. John, it's always great to have you with us. Thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And out to the freeways now, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. President Trump on track to take office in January. What happens now to all of those legal cases President Trump has been facing? Let's bring in attorney Lou Shapiro now, criminal defense attorney and legal analyst based right here in Los Angeles. Lou Shapiro, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
Hey, for sure. Great to be back with you, Frank.
Wonderful to have you with us, and want to pick your legal mind here. And I know you've been tracking all of these cases that President Trump has been dealing with for, a couple of years now. Take it from the top and tell us about your assessment here about what happens to all these cases.
Well, I think what we've seen here gives a whole new meaning to the term running for your life. I don't think we've ever seen a situation where somebody basically was at the juncture of going into door number 1, which is potentially prison, or door number 2, which is the White House. It's quite remarkable when you think about that for a moment. Just zooming out, that this person had 4 serious criminal matters pending against him. We got state and federal, not to mention the civil matters. And then with sort of like a swipe of a pen here, having won the presidency, it really will be changing the dynamic of all of this moving forward.
Right, and the sentencing had been delayed until after the election. What is the status of that case where he had faced possible jail time?
Well, the first thing that we have up on the table is really tomorrow is the sentencing for the hush money case. That's a state case out of New York, where we know Judge Merchant has not been very kind to Trump throughout the trial, even before. But he's put in a tough spot because on one hand, we had the Supreme Court's decision on presidential immunity, which that needs to be taken into account as to whether sentencing can even proceed, given that that underlying issue needs to be resolved. Does the trial need to be done all over again in light of the presidential immunity ruling? But even beyond that, now the fact that the feds have indicated, particularly the special counsel has said that he's going to be winding down the federal cases based on the longstanding proposition that you don't indict or prosecute a sitting president, the argument can be made to the state court case in New York, how much more so they need to dial back. They need to let this go, because if the feds are letting it go, the state must let it go as well. So a lot of things can happen in those directions tomorrow in New York.
All right, what set us up for tomorrow? What is the situation? Is President Trump going to be there, or what's going to be the situation tomorrow?
I would expect he would be there in light of the fact that this is an important juncture in his criminal proceedings. Sort of sets the tone for, I think, his other cases, what happens. So if I were him, I would expect him to be taking this very seriously, setting the right message that if this goes in his way, so too the other cases should as well. So I think he'll be there.
I think the sentencing, from what I understand, is scheduled for November 26th. So there's some sort of a hearing tomorrow. Is that the indication now? So might we see something dramatic tomorrow?
Well, the hearing is really about it bleeds into the sentencing, because the hearing is about whether the ruling of the Supreme Court that a president is entitled to immunity based on discussions that he or she has had in the capacity of the presidency, can they be prosecuted for it? And the Supreme Court said there's a presumption that they cannot. So a lot of evidence Trump's camp is arguing was allowed into the underlying hush money trial that should not have been allowed, given the new ruling of presidential immunity. So we'll see if the judge actually feels that it would necessitate a do-over, or is he just going to say, you know what, I'm not even going to do this trial again. We're not going to have a sentencing come a few weeks from now. We're just going to dispose of this right here, right now.
On your live with attorney Lou Shapiro. And Turning now to the other cases, the one in Georgia, for example, and then and right down the line here, the one with the special counsel Jack Smith. He's expected to end his cases against President Trump, right? What about these other matters still outstanding?
So the two federal cases outstanding that we mentioned about Jack Smith, special counsel, who Trump said that he would be firing within the first 2 seconds of when he takes office. I think he got that memo, the special prosecutor, and said he's not going to, well, I guess he's going to try to get ahead of things. And I don't know if it's that he doesn't want to give Trump the satisfaction of being able to pardon himself after winning the presidency, or this is an attempt to just basically try to save his job and save some face in this. But regardless, he said he's going to be winding this down. It sounds like the federal cases will be going away, which therefore only leaves that state case out of Georgia. Now, we know that case has had its own problems, legal problems. But the judge there still has to decide, and this is on the appellate level now, if there was problems with the lead prosecutor hiring her boyfriend at that time to join the case and get paid via taxpayer money to prosecute Trump. So that whole conflict of interest is being fleshed out. Not a good look for the prosecutors there, regardless of how it turns out. And if these other three cases end up folding, it wouldn't surprise me if that case ends up folding as well, in line with the overarching theory or notion that we don't prosecute a sitting president. It's just not something we do here in the United States.
All right. Can you imagine the legal bills for all of this? Who ultimately picks up the tab for all this?
Well, it's interesting. It would be the general person's concern. Bills probably running in the millions. But then again, we know that once Trump won the election, his Truth Social stock holdings skyrocketed. So I think his valuation right now between his holdings and Truth Social is somewhere between $4 and $6 billion. So if there's any outstanding legal bills, I think he'll be able to pay them now.
Isn't that something? Well, we'll follow this closely with you, Lou. Thank you very much for taking the call here. Historic times here and very interesting from a legal standpoint, and appreciate you highlighting all of this for us as we watch this play out now. Lou Shapiro, based here in Los Angeles, attorney Lou Shapiro, Esquire, criminal defense attorney and legal analyst. Lou, thank you very much for joining us live this afternoon.
You got it. Always a pleasure, Frank.
Likewise, thank you very much. And we're speaking on a record-shattering day for the stock market as well as for cryptos, with Bitcoin flirting with 90,000 at last check. The Dow at a record high close, up more than 300 today at 44,293. The S&P 500 up 6 to a record high 6,001. The NASDAQ up 12 at 19,299. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. And then stay tuned for Winning with WINANS with Ken Winans. And I'll be back with Ken in the 6 o'clock hour right here on 790 KBC.
Welcome to Talkville, the ultimate Smallville rewatch podcast. So now Clark knows that Lionel knows about his powers. Tom, any memories from this scene?
No, but I saw a missed opportunity in watching it when Lionel puts his hand on Clark at the end and says, "Thank you, son." I wish I would have done something like, "Don't call me son." I just feel like we missed that beat.
What's that, Leslie Nielsen?
Airplane?
Surely you can't be serious. I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
Talkville, wherever you listen.